Well, we'll delay it. Yeah, let's see what they're. I would thought that someone would certainly be here. We're recording, so we're good to go. Okay. All right. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Make sure everybody's awake. Welcome to the MAPC Advanced Plans Committee for Thursday, July 25th. Call the meeting to order. First off with roll call. Obviously, B. Fry is here. Joe Johnson. Here. Cindy Miles. John McKay.
Here.
Chuck Warren.
Here.
Hugh Nix.
Here.
And Leon Mader.
Here.
And then others, we have, Scott's not here, Justin is here, JR is not going to be here. Momita, there we go. Ty Ben, in the back, thank you.
We have an older.
I see, oh, welcome, Mr. Duell. Thank you. Mary is here. Who's Abigail?
Yep, correct.
Yep, thank you. And then Samantha. Thank you. All right. All right, with that, our next order of business is the June 13th meeting summary. Everyone had a chance to review. Any questions or comments or corrections needing to be made to that?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Nix and a second from, I'll make the second. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed. And Joe abstained. Thank you. I hadn't gotten to that yet, but thank you. All right. Motion passes 5-0 with one abstain. Our next item of agenda is the City of Wichita Capital Improvements Program. Impeccable timing. Elizabeth.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry, I never got the meeting notice. So, hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm here to present today the Capital Improvements Program for the City of Wichita. Both the CIP and the budget were presented to the City Council on July 16th, and both of those have been posted online since the Friday since then. So let me see. Oh, can I? Okay, great. So there's a lot of factors that go into development of the CIP. And one of those, of course, is the Community Investments Plan. It very much guides the development of the Capital Improvement Program, both CIPs each year. Additionally, the CIP is guided by the City Council mission and goals, broad City Council policy direction, which we received in workshops this year. We had monthly workshops. Well, we skipped March, but we had 5 workshops from January to June this year. So we received broad policy direction about the CIP, and I'll go into that in a little bit. And it's also based on community priorities. So if you had a chance to see any of the budget workshops this year, you'll see that our budget was very much guided from the results of the 2023 community survey. So just an overview, a reminder for those of you who are familiar, and an intro for those who are new to the City of Wichita CIP. Our CIP very much, a large part of our CIP is for water and sewer utilities. So the revenue side for water and sewer utilities matches the expenditure side for water and sewer because those are all self-funded by ratepayers. The CIP also has quite a bit of state and federal funds in it. A lot of that is related to the freeway section of the CIP. We also have local sales tax funds that fund streets, bridges, and freeways, including the local match for those freeway projects. And then GEO at-large funding. And that's primarily for heavy equipment, facilities, things like maintenance of facilities and construction of facilities and parks. So that's the where the money comes from. My daughter asked me the other night, she goes, "Mommy, where does your money come from for your work?" And I was like, "I have a pie chart." So lucky you've come to the right person. So on the expenditure side of the CIP, these slices of the pie chart all correspond to the different sections in the CIP, both for the future projects and the projects in progress. So water and sewer are very large portions of the CIP. And additionally, the streets is a big part of the CIP, and public facilities. So there a lot of the discussion in the CIP actually for the GEO at large, those are actually smaller slices of the CIP than some of the others. There's quite a bit in the CIP for public safety and also for public facilities. The large portion of that public facility slice is for the convention center, which at this point, addressing issues at the convention center, which at this point in time are unfunded. Okay, so why we're here today is to connect the CIP, or formally connect the CIP to the Community Investments Plan. And this is something that is included in our CIP. We've used this guidance ever since this last Community Investments Plan was approved, I believe, in 2015. And the first priority in the Community Investments Plan is to maintain and replace what we currently have. And this has been a very salient priority in the development of the CIP. It also was, when I talk about broad policy direction that we received during the budget workshops, there's a real focus and emphasis on maintenance that came from our governing body, and we use that in development of the CIP. The second priority is to enhance what we currently have, and then the third priority is to expand. So that, based on those priorities, we feel that there is conformance with the Community Investments Plan. And then this Community Investments Plan looks at things by type of spending, and again, particularly due to streets and water supply, over half of the City of Wichita CIP is in categories that are considered very high priority in the Community Investments Plan. So, next slide. So pavement maintenance is something that is a very, we're going to have our community survey out in the field again this fall, but last fall we asked people to rate the condition of many of our services, or the service level, and then also to rate the importance. And pavement maintenance came back to something that's very important across the community. We've heard this for a long time. The CIP has had increased amounts for street maintenance each year. Those are for our bid out street maintenance projects. And then additionally this year, the CIP includes $2 million per year for supplemental concrete mitigation. So these are for concrete streets, largely in older residential neighborhoods in the core, that due to the way that the Public Works Department, they use a data-driven decision-making tool to allocate funding for contracted street repair, a lot of these concrete streets don't rise to the top, so this supplemental funding will address those issues. And we feel that that also aligns with the community investments plan, the focus on the core area and maintenance. Next one is building maintenance. I don't think I can control this. Okay, so there's over $32 million in the CIP for building maintenance. So a lot of that is for general facility maintenance, maintenance of our city hall, and also our fire and police facilities. We have quite a few of those. And in addition to this amount, there's $33 million allocated for cultural facility maintenance, and that's paid for by our transient guest tax. And a lot of those are for facilities that the city of Wichita owns, and nonprofit organizations have agreements with us to operate from those facilities. So lots of maintenance in the CIP. Next one is on local sales tax for roads. So as you know, there's a countywide sales tax. The city of Wichita receives a portion of that. And then the city of Wichita's allocation is split between the local sales tax fund for roads, bridges, and freeway improvements. And the other half goes into the general fund. As you can see here, we have a considerable amount of funding over the 10-year period for road projects, and then the freeway projects as well. So,
Elizabeth,
yes,
I have a question on that.
sure.
Can you detail what the freeway projects are,
Sure, you bet.
please?
No problem. So the first one is Kellogg, K96 to 159th Street East. The second one is K96 expansion. The next one, the third line, is Kellogg from 119th to 143rd Street West.
I'm sorry, 119th to,
143rd, sorry, big numbers.
sorry, you said Kellogg 119th to 100 and,
43rd Street West.
Okay.
And that's a $4 million project. The other two are much larger. And then the last project is in 2025, 2.1 million for Kellogg and Ridge enhancements. So that's 2.1 million in 25, and then 5 million in 30.
so those are the four projects that make up
Those
that
are-
25 million,
The four projects that make up.
the 25.7 million?
So in total, this is $112 million. No, in total, this is $421 million in
Right, but
projects.
I'm just looking at the freeway projects.
Yeah, it's $421.1 million in freeway projects. The 25.7 million is the LST funding for them because they're
Gotcha.
leveraged, very leveraged.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for the longest time, the Kellogg projects were funded solely by our local sales tax.
Right,
And relatively recently, within the last 5 to 10 years, the state has participated more in these freeway projects. So we've been matching them. And so that's our local sales tax funds.
is there
that
any
come from.
LST funding for the Northwest Expressway?
That's not identified in the CIP.
I know that at the last Advanced Plans Committee meeting, the county presented their CIP, and they are allocating dollars for property acquisition for the Northwest Expressway, and they have for several years. And now that the Northwest Expressway overlay touches part of the city of Wichita, and it didn't used to, I would hope at some point we would start considering some LST funding for property acquisition. It's an editorial comment.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that it was identified as not in this CIP.
Right. And so the other thing too to keep in mind is when the state, when on these different projects, they've had different local partners for them. So it could be the county. I will check in on this.
But originally, the city of Wichita was a local partner.
Yeah. So, but they'll have a project lead. So
Okay.
locally, and as opposed to KDOT doing the projects themselves.
Right. Thank you. I just want to clarify. Thank you.
Yep, those are the 4 freeway projects. Be grateful that he asked for a listing of freeway projects and not streets. We'd be here a while.
Exactly.
All right, are we ready for the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, on to utilities. I've already mentioned this already. Utilities are a big focus of the CIP, and they're a big focus for the city of Wichita. These projects maintain their current system, ensure that there's been a lot of discussion about there's been some big projects, but also just a lot of maintenance projects, replacing pipe, repairing and pump stations and those sorts of things. So those are a big part of the CIP. Next slide. So most of the costs associated with public safety you'll find in the operating budget. The lion's share of the general fund operating budget is for police and fire. However, the CIP also supports those departments and includes two police station replacements. Those will be for Patrol North and Patrol South. Patrol East is already operational, and Patrol West is going to be funded with ARPA. The replacement of fire stations, and that's being driven in part by data-driven decision-making from the fire optimization study, and also the ongoing replacement of fire trucks. Those are some of the highlights for public safety items in the CIP. Next one. Park. So the discussion this year during the budget workshops about park projects was interesting. And that being the case, this EIP includes funding for an update of the park master plan, which would be of particular interest to you all. The park master plan seems to have been updated about every 8 years, or approved and then updated every 8 years. And so I think we're in year 8 or 9 since the last one is updated. So it's time for a new park master plan, just to provide some guidance about investment in the park system, especially related to things that aren't maintenance related, but are more related to enhancement and expansion projects. That being the case, the park section of the CIP at this point is largely limited to maintenance projects to maintain park facilities and things along those lines. It has very limited projects related to enhancements in the park system. And so once the park master plan is complete, I think that the idea is that that would guide discussion during development of the CIP. Okay, next one. So expansion and enhancement is the lower priority in the community investments plan. As I mentioned, thank goodness this number matches. There's $420 million included for freeway expansion, but then only $25.7 million will be local funds for matching. And I mentioned before, there's $400 million in the CIP for addressing the convention center, but funding sources have not yet been identified. And then special assessments, that's $305 million of the CIP. Those are for sanitary sewer, water, stormwater, and paving improvements for new developments. And those are included in the CIP, and those are expansion and enhancement projects. And the last slide is just the calendar. So the CIP was presented on July 16th. The Advanced Plans Committee, well, let's see.
I think there's a typo there.
We're today. So, and then I think it'll go back to the MAPC on August 8th. And that's also, if you want a double header, we have our evening budget hearing is on August 8th as well at 6 p.m. Then there'll be another budget hearing on August 13th, and then adoption is scheduled for August 20th. So that is the information. And then the last slide here, if this piques your interest and you'd like to find out more, the CIP is available online And, that it includes the financial summaries for each of our funding sources as well as projects. So happy to be here, and any other questions?
Any committee members have questions for Elizabeth? Mr. Warren?
Just a couple simple questions. On page 4, looking at the difference on the supplemental concrete mitigation versus street maintenance, there's a big difference there. Is that because there's fewer concrete projects, or concrete projects last longer?
Pardon, so, sorry, this is the one about pavement maintenance?
Yes.
So we can go, I don't think I can move this. And your question was about?
You got 13 million for street maintenance, but 2 million for supplemental concrete. Is the fact that concrete is so much lower, is that due to fewer concrete projects, or concrete projects last longer?
No, the amount is simply that we hadn't had a supplemental concrete mitigation project in the CIP in the past. The column for street maintenance, that was the project that was in the CIP. So this is an additional project that we added. It's really based on community priorities and capacity in the CIP for this additional work.
And my other question was park projects and the master plan coming together. Will that take care of what's going on at CLAP?
I think that CLAP is already funded in the CIP. It would be in both projects in progress. I think that project has already been initiated. Hold on a sec. So in the projects in progress section, there's already been $6.1 million in the CLAP project that's been initiated. In addition, there's a project in progress for art that's $300,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? So the recommendation here would be to, a motion to recommend that the MAPC find it in conformance with the comprehensive plan. If the board is in agreement with that, I would entertain
So
a
moved.
motion. We have a motion from Chuck Warren.
Second.
Second from Mr. Nix. Any other discussion? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Yeah, thank you for your service on this committee.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And then this will go to the MAPC on August 8th.
Right, that's right.
So, thank you. All right, next item is a Board of Zoning Appeals bylaws update. Justin.
Good morning, everybody. Justin Constantino with the Planning Department. Multiple Board of Zoning Appeals members have recently expressed a desire to review the existing BZA bylaws and provide an update. Staff has reviewed and updated the BZA bylaws with the intent of making them more consistent with the current MAPC bylaws. The current BZA bylaws were last revised in June of 2017. The proposed updates to the BZA bylaws include that BZA meetings would have the option of virtual attendance for participation. This was something that was done in the MAPC bylaws during the COVID era that we had not changed to correspond with the BZA bylaws. Additional changes include procedures for calling special meetings that would be updated to allow the vice chair to call for a special meeting during the absence of a chair. Currently, the chairperson is the only individual that can call a special meeting, but in this case, it makes it a little bit easier if that chairperson is not in attendance. The emergency meetings section of the bylaws was updated to be clearer and emphasize compliance with Kansas state statutes. The conflict of interest and ethical considerations sections of the bylaws were updated to clarify member voter participation, and multiple updates are included to clarify processes and meeting procedures. Generally, just a lot of cleanup items to match the language in the MAPC document. Words like chairman were changed to chair, and those types of smaller changes. But staff is requesting that the Advanced Plans Committee review these attached changes to the BZA bylaws and then recommend approval to the BZA. That concludes everything that I have. I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you, Justin. Right off the bat, at the beginning of your presentation, you talked about the variance case that was deferred due to voting requirements in the BZA laws, and that kind of spurred this discussion. Where is that in this document?
So we didn't include any background information about that particular case in that document. I know that it was a BZA meeting where
Right, but is there a recommendation change to the bylaws because of that? And where would we find that in this?
let's see. I know that Abby, I know not to call you out, but I remember I think you were the one that brought up that during the BZA meeting. Do you recall that?
Mr. Chairman, as to your question, the other council president could correct me, but I don't think we made a specific change to address that situation. We didn't change the number of votes or anything like that. That is under the section on quorum. I can dig through and find that.
So that just really
it was
spurred the
that event
discussion
kind
then.
of
Okay.
spurred us to be looking so closely at those
I
bylaws.
just want to make sure if there was a change that we identified that.
We did not make that
Okay.
change.
So I know for a lot of you, this is the first time you're seeing these proposed changes. And haven't had a chance to really review them yet. So any questions immediately that anyone else may have? Mr. McKay?
About the virtual tenants, are we changing that back to like the planning commission is, or this going to be different?
This will mirror the language that is in the Planning Commission document. So previously, the mention of virtual meetings were not included in these BZA bylaws. So the goal was to provide that option through this change.
I thought we adamantly said they didn't want to do both, do one or the other.
I think we had some discussion about whether or not virtual attendance was something that this committee desired. But at the very least, having this in the BZA and MAPC bylaws allows the flexibility to do that if necessary.
I don't agree with that.
Mr. McKay,
It's an option.
An option only if we.
If you choose to do it, yes, correct.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think the goal with that, adding that, is to give the option for situations more if someone were not able to attend, say they had a broken leg or something, couldn't make it here.
And is that the current MAPC meeting policy?
No.
So that would be part of the next item of the MAPC bylaws update, a change there as well?
Mr. Chairman, what we did is tried to mirror what was allowed in the BZA and the MAPC. Obviously, since it's a joint, it would be kind of awkward to say that somebody in the BZA could attend remotely if the MAPC was not allowed to. So the MAPC can vote whether they need to or not if we had another pandemic or something like that. This gives that base authority to revert to that.
I understand that. I'm just asking, is that what the current MAPC bylaws allow?
Yes, we changed that
Okay.
right after COVID to allow for emergency virtual meetings kind of a thing. So,
Okay.
but we did not do it in the
Yeah, but we've
BZA.
discussed that at length over the last year and a half.
Right.
And we went to the fact that there'd be no virtual period.
Well, that's the way your policy is to do that. However, if there were another pandemic or some basis for justifying it, we wouldn't have to then go back and amend the bylaws at that time to authorize it. So,
But Jeff, you're opening Pandora's box again.
yeah, it's not by right.
So
it's
what?
by-
I have two sets of rules.
It was very good when we had COVID. And if we have it again, we should do it.
It seems to me like that you should make an exception for a board member, somebody that broke their leg would have an opportunity to do that. I mean, I don't know why you would want to open up. I mean, how do we know whether there's going to be another pandemic? Address the situation when it happens. If it happens.
Okay, again,
Because we would have to miss meetings until it was authorized in the bylaws to do it that way.
Well, how long does that take?
Quite a while. I mean, we could miss a month.
It doesn't seem to me like it should take too long.
I mean, just to comply with the ones for MAPC, it took us about that long to get county and city and everybody on the same page with it. Again, this is going to lie dormant until that happens. That's not a big problem to me, but it just allows us to have that option if in the event it does occur, as opposed to going back and forth. Since the COVID was a temporary kind of a thing, the council or the commission then said, no, we don't want to have it virtual anymore. We've already been advised. I checked with the city attorney and chief deputy, and they said it's not permissible to allow the commission to attend virtual, but not the public. So we have to do it one or the other, according to their position on that.
And Jeff, that's exactly what we talked about. You know, how can you say to commissioners, you can do it virtually, but attend a application, people can't do that? And, you know, and I thought we voted, and I thought it was unanimous that we say, hey, we don't want virtual anymore, period. And if we need to do it, then we can go back and change it. Now you're leaving the door wide open that anybody wants to do it can do it.
And that's not true. It has to be approved by the commission before it could be done. And you cannot allow the commissioners to do it without opening it up to the public at the same time. So it's one of those things that we looked at it as it's going to be dormant. It's going to lay in there. It's not hurting anything. And it doesn't open the door per se unless this commission were to vote to go virtually in.
In the old days before COVID, did we do this virtually?
No.
Well, COVID sparked the need to do this. And so because of that, we're reacting to COVID rather than going back to the way it was before the pandemic. Is that right?
Well, actually,
Commission has
technology
authorized
allowed
us
us
to
to do it.
Well,
so we have a copy of the markup with the revised language that would allow this option to review. What other changes is anyone seeing immediately that they have questions or concerns about? Mr. Dool?
Mr. Chairman, I understand that proposed bylaws for BZA will remain the same with regard to what the definition of quorum is. Because we had this issue we talked about it a minute ago, but I'm of the opinion that in the definition of quorum, it certainly ought to be consistent with the definition of quorum with the MAPC.
Is there a reason it's different?
Yeah, because there's only 8, there's 14 here.
Quorum with BZA is a quorum of the entire commission, which is, you take 8 votes to approve it. BZA.
I guess like my question is,
In
yeah.
the city, it's a quorum is a majority of the folks who are present.
Right. I guess my question is that a requirement as defined by state law? Or is that set by city council or the MAPC, or how is that
I
determined?
guess I'm missing the question, and I apologize. We had a quorum is a majority of the members present, to constitute, in a case of the, like this committee, 7 members, you have to have 4 to have a quorum, right? BZA and MAPC have the same, because it's the same group of people, you have to have 8 to have a quorum there. Now, the difference is in a BZA meeting, when we convert to that, and it's a variance approval, 8 of the total of the 14 have to vote to approve a variance. And that could be a unanimous vote on, if there's only 8 members at the MAPC/BZA meeting, okay, and there's a variance that come up, it would have to be a unanimous vote to approve that variance. Unless you said, I don't like this, I'm gonna defer it to allow for more people to be here or something to that effect.
I understand that's the way it is, but why is it required for a variance? Why can it not be the same as it is with the MAPC?
Throughout Robert's rules and a lot of different organizations, just like, for example, if you want to change the bylaws, for example, it requires a 2/3 vote. All right, so there are certain things that require a supermajority vote of some nature. Given that a variance, the very nature of that, those 5 elements have to be all present and approved. It's a stricter standard to deviate from our code than otherwise. And so because of that, they didn't want a simple majority to allow for deviations in our zoning code. It has to be a stronger presence wishing to approve that than otherwise. And it's just been a long standing tradition in Roberts and other kind of parliamentary issues. On certain issues, there's elevated voting requirements.
So when you say they, you're saying Robert's Rules of Order set it at 8?
Well, that's, no. What I'm saying is the precedent to require a
I get that.
supermajority, right? And the supermajority was determined, I have no clue, it's been that way since I've been here. 8 members and so that was done probably, I would assume, just because of what I just talked about. It's deviating from our codes, a more serious requirement than just,
Yeah, I understand your explanation. I was just trying to determine who to set that level of 8.
I know that's, I wish JR was here, but I bet that's been in there since we've had BZA. I know well before, when there were 2 BZAs, city and county, that was a requirement. And it required 5 out of 7 at that time because there was only 7 members. And so I know when we consolidated, I was part of that, both organizations, we just carried that requirement forward. So it has been that way minimally 15 years, but I bet it's probably since the 70s or something to that effect.
I think that's what you're trying to get at, correct, Mr. Dool? Okay. Mr. Warren?
I understand the need on certain issues to have a supermajority. I think the supermajority that we're looking at now though, is almost impossible. If we have a small number of people here to come together. If you've got a meeting with 4 people that is a quorum, let's say.
What we're talking about for the variance, it's with the same number as MAPC, so you have to have at least 8 there to constitute a quorum, not 4. This committee, subdivision committee, will not rule on a variance for, yeah.
Okay, well, I guess my point would be is that instead of requiring if you had 8 members requiring a unanimous vote, I would be looking for a majority vote plus 1. I mean, the issue the other month, last month, we had a majority vote, which was not enough. My thinking would be a majority plus 1 would be a supermajority. We maybe I couldn't identify that, but that would be a situation where we would require something more without making it almost impossible to reach a certain level.
Yeah, that vote would have been 7-3.
I'm not saying it shouldn't take more, that a variance shouldn't require something more, but requiring everybody in attendance to have a unanimous vote seems almost an impossible level to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, if we only had 8 people at MAPC BZA, all right, it would require a unanimous vote. Otherwise, it doesn't. It just has 8 out of the 14, so to speak. You do have the right, if you just have 8 members present at a BZA MAPC meeting, to say, I want to defer this because of the, heightened requirement of a unanimous vote in that case.
But who said the next meeting is going to have enough people there? I mean, we should be able to make a decision with the number of people that show up, that if it's a quorum, then a supermajority of a higher level of a vote would be a majority plus 1.
It's going to come down to an opinion. We'll take it back and talk to Scott about it as further. Same thing as far as amending these bylaws. You wanted a majority plus one or 2/3. I mean, anything that's a heightened voting requirement is going to run into scenarios whether, well, we should, if we only had 6 votes, but if we had 7, we would have approved it or whatever the case might be. I don't remember a scenario where that's come up before since I've been here, honestly, that we've had an issue with that. But, we are speculating that if we only had 8 here, I don't recall that happening where we voted on something like that. But we can take it back and have some reconsideration on it. We'll have to, if they're going to, I won't have much of a say in it too much longer, but I do believe in the heightened voting requirements on certain things because of the drastic nature of what is required to deviate from a zoning code that has been approved by the governing body. In essence, you're allowing an override of that by a variance. So,
Commissioner Mader.
Just my thoughts on this. You say the policy's been around probably 50 years, going back to the 70s. My math is close, we're 50 years. And in that time, we've had this issue once. It really seems a little extreme to change the whole policy because of one issue in 50 years, be my thought.
JR's been here 35 or so, and he doesn't remember it either happening. So how long it's been in the code, I don't know. But as far as actual events taking place, don't know of any scenario other than the one we just had. So,
Any other questions? So, Commissioner McKay.
Can we go back to my question that we started off before we got
Sure.
on voting? I thought we discussed this at length and decided as a committee, not just this committee, but recommended to the full planning commission that we don't do virtual. I can see some attorney seeing that number one and saying, well, you guys need to vote or you need to do something like this. It's representing my guy because he just broke his arm or he just was in a car wreck or something to that effect. And
we do allow for ADA accommodations if they notify us ahead of the meeting. Because that way we don't have to set up.
That was a poor example, Jeff, I'm sorry.
Oh, and it doesn't matter, but I mean, we do allow for virtual if it's an ADA accommodation issue.
But you do it on
But if you're
base-to-base
just not feeling
costs.
well and rather do it remotely or something like that, we just, we don't have that, for anybody's right now. If we take it all out, I'll just explain what we had to do to get it approved last time, and we'll just have to come back and forth if that need arises. But this allows for the ability to provide for accommodations for under ADA.
So you're saying then we as a committee, planning commission, on a particular case, can't vote for that one particular case to do it virtual if we're known about it in advance?
If they it's not a question of whether you guys approve it or not under ADA, we have to accommodate from that. So it's not a vote. We just have to know ahead of time so staff can get it approved. They have to notify us it has to be an ADA issue, and then we have to have staff be able to hook it up for that person to appear remotely.
What I'm saying is that Joe Blow calls and says, I want to do it virtual. And the way it is now, we say no. The way this is right now, so they know that's a rule. Everybody, you know it, I know it, and everybody that comes in here knows about it. That's a rule. You don't have it virtual. Because we had people not showing up. I can remember when we were over in the other building and we had to do it at that point in time. Sometimes we'd go back and forth 3 or 4 times in subdivision because somebody would be on for a minute and then they'd go to the bathroom or they'd go drink a cup of coffee or something and they'd come back and they weren't there. And that happened a number of times. And that's one of the reasons why when we got back to normal, we go back to normal where there wasn't that option to go virtual. And
I think all we can do is with your, if it's the will of this committee at this point, we could take it back and reevaluate, just taking it out entirely, the ability to have.
I would suggest that that's what we do. And if there's a proper way to do it, I would make a motion, but there's not a proper way to do it at this point in time.
Well,
I don't
you
think.
wouldn't recommend it going, it didn't sound like there'd be enough here to vote to approve it to go to MAPC. So, if that's the case, we can send it back to staff for evaluation of that.
In this day of technology.
Did you have a comment, Mr. Nix?
So I'm with John. I remember a lot of conversation, but I don't know that we're ever allowed to vote. I don't think it'd be reflected in the minutes anywhere, would it?
Tracking your question, allowed to vote for what?
Allowed to go virtual or not to go virtual? A lot of conversation, but was it in the minutes? And
It was
were we
in the
allowed to
MAPC.
even talk about it?
Right. It was in the MAPC, but there was no correlating vote in the BZA. And that's when we realized there was a difference between the two. So that's why we want to try to unify them.
So I was not part of this committee when this all went down originally, but reading these revised bylaws, it says board meetings may also allow for virtual attendance and participation by members of the board and members of the public to view, listen, and participate. Is this technology that we have currently
We can modify that language that
for them to
either
participate?
take it out entirely or make it so it's not as permissive, where it's like only upon, the approval of the MAPC with 30 days or something like that. We can make it hard so it's
So-
not viewed as permissive every
Again,
time.
with this being the first chance that this board has been able to see this, and I know there's a lot more recommendations as well that we haven't even touched on. And I know the staff recommended action is to review and recommend approval. I don't think we're there today yet for that recommendation. And I know we've got a lengthy agenda, but I would like to suggest that we receive and file these recommendations and the body review them over the next month, and this be brought back as an agenda item at our next meeting for consideration of approval.
How are we gonna discuss it with the non-members?
Well, so this committee, everyone has a copy of it, and you can review, and then you can come back at our next, and Commissioner Miles will get a copy of this. So over the next month, we'd have the opportunity to review and then come back at our next meeting for further discussion, questions, clarifications, and any changes to these bylaws.
I would request that if there's any other issues that you want staff to look at, let us know now so we don't wait a month and then come back and find out there was something
Yeah,
else.
no,
So
I would
this
suggest
is a big
review
one,
these-
obviously, but
Review these quickly and get it to staff
Okay, thank you.
as possible. Does that sound acceptable to everyone, or is?
Well, except the next meeting will be the first Thursday of August.
Our next advanced plans
The next
committee?
advanced plans meeting comes up soon, so we can either go to first one in August or the first one in September.
What's our next advanced plans committee meeting date?
August 8th.
August 8th? Yes. 2 weeks away. And the next, but is this on the MAPC calendar for an agenda item yet?
Yes, currently it is.
What date is that?
It would be for August 8th, I believe, if it was approved today for a recommendation.
Yeah. That might have to be some discussion with the chair of the MAPC to decide if he wants to put it on that agenda or not, based off of this discussion. It just feels very rushed considering what we're talking about to be that advanced of a schedule.
So the balance of the planning commission then will not see this until it comes before them for approval, correct?
When would the rest of the planning commission see these?
I mean, if we're gonna get them in advance to review, I'd suggest giving to the whole planning commission, let them review it. So that at least they'll know what we're talking about.
I mean,
Is there any rush to do this within the next 2 weeks? I think that I'm in favor of deferring this for the advanced plans for 2 weeks, and I would suggest, unless there's some compelling reason, that you don't bring it to the MAPC until September, and they've had a chance to look at it at
Yeah.
that time.
And I think that's kind of where we were headed. I didn't realize that it was on the planning commission's August 8th agenda until just now. So that's why your comment, Mr. Warren, makes us want to delay this, just like what Commissioner Dool is saying. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
maybe we could ask staff, could we just pull that from the MAPC agenda since we need they're
Yeah,
indicating
I think that's
we
where
need
we're
more
heading
time.
too. So,
Do you need a motion for this, Mr. Fry?
yes, I believe so.
I would make the motion, we defer this for 2 weeks and,
Yeah, for our next advance meeting. Yep. So I have a motion. I will second that. And just to clarify, the motion is to defer decision until August 8th. And we bring it back on that agenda for discussion and
Yeah, we will talk to planning staff to make sure that these proposals are sent out to everybody well ahead of time, both MAPC and advanced plans. Again, I'm going to go back before the motion's voted on. Is there any other thing that is of issue you want staff to look at? I hate to leave it and then come back in 2 weeks and,
yeah.
well,
we're gonna
that's
have
my
this-
point.
yeah.
I mean, I know you want to defer it, but we don't know what your issues are.
Well, we don't know until we've had a chance to
Okay.
really review because
So you don't
most
wanna
of
do it
these
here?
members
Okay.
have not seen this until
Okay.
today.
well, I think what we're saying is we should notify the powers to be right away, once we find out that we
Exactly.
want to discuss something, and not wait till the next meeting to discuss.
So
that
review
fair?
and get- So we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Justin, MAPC bylaws update.
Sure. So this item is sort of the 1B to the 1A of our previous discussion. I'm happy to kind of go through this and at least provide a little bit of background. The Metropolitan Area Planning Commission last approved updates to these bylaws on September 15th of 2022. The updates primarily focused on how virtual participation could be allowed for regular MAPC meetings. Again, this was done kind of during the COVID era. Staff is currently in the process of updating the BZA bylaws, as you all are very aware. And we considered that it might be beneficial to review the MAPC bylaws to be more consistent with some of those updates that are proposed in the draft BZA bylaws. So we wanted to kind of do a side-by-side comparison of both of those documents and make sure that that language compared appropriately. So the proposed updates to the MAPC bylaws include procedures for calling special meetings that would be updated to allow any 5 members of the MAPC to call for a special meeting during the absence of a chair during or upon written request. Emergency meetings, that section of the bylaws was updated, very similar to BZA to be clearer and emphasize compliance with Kansas state statutes. Conflict of interest and ethical considerations, that section of the bylaws was updated to clarify member voting participation. And multiple updates are included to clarify general processes and meeting procedures. Again, kind of trying to mirror that language of the BZA bylaws as much as possible to make it a cleaner document. We were requesting that the Advanced Plans Committee review the attached changes to these MAPC bylaws and request approval by the MAPC. So again, kind of 1A to 1B, we thought it would be a great opportunity to take a deeper dive into these MAPC bylaws, considering we were looking at revamping the BZA bylaws as well.
I'd make the same motion as I did on A.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that was unanimous. So we have a motion to defer to the same timeline, correct, Mr. Johnson? Okay. I will second that. And if there's any other discussion on this right now, before I call for the vote, I would just like to stress to staff that I think it's important that we review bylaws regularly. And so I'm thankful for this opportunity. I just want it so that everybody knows that we've got time to review it and make comments rather than seeing it and then voting on the same meeting. So again, I commend the action for bringing the update to us. I just think we need to slow down a little bit and have the opportunity to review. So just want staff to understand that. So any other comments or questions? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And again, same motion if there is or same action. If you see something in this, get it to staff as quickly as possible so that they would be able to review and make comments before our next meeting. So, all right, next item, Justin, parking RFP update.
Sure. So this is just an update on our parking request for proposals. The MAPD is currently undergoing a process to review and align our parking requirements with community goals. This effort will focus on a potential update of both the Unified Zoning Code and the Comprehensive Plan. In April of 2024, we solicited proposals from qualified companies to provide professional services to assist with this process. And that RFP selection committee made up of staff members. We met to review those proposals on May 22nd. We rejected those proposals, and they did not align with the project budget. So the selection committee recommended revising the RFP document, clarifying some items, and providing more resources on this topic that staff has previously researched. A revised version was released on July 18th, so just last week, with a due date of August 16th. We hope to receive those proposals, and those will be evaluated during the week of August 19th, and the project will be tentatively awarded on September 24th of 2024. So a little bit of an updated timeline there. Just wanted to give you all an update on that.
Justin, how far does the parking study extend? What are the boundaries?
It would be citywide.
Citywide?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions for Justin on this item? Nope. Okay, seeing next agenda item, College Hill Neighborhood Plan.
Sure. Update on this item. We are currently working with College Hill stakeholders to develop a plan for the neighborhood. The plan would serve as a guide for future policies, programs, and infrastructure. We began working on this back in November of 2023 with a 15-member steering committee that was appointed by the City Council. This project, the project team has hosted a community kickoff meeting since then, and we held a survey that had over 530 responses. Of those responses, 70% of them were responders from the College Hill neighborhood. The project team, we also hosted an individual focus group meetings for the business community, schools, and nonprofits. Churches were included in that as well to gather additional feedback. On July 24th, so just yesterday, we hosted our 5th steering committee meeting from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. at Plymouth Congregational Church in the College Hill neighborhood. The steering committee developed a draft vision statement, and they established plan themes that were focused on housing, mobility, land use development, and community cohesion. The next steering committee meeting is scheduled for late August. So we are moving right along on that.
Justin,
Yes.
What's the anticipated conclusion of this project? Is there a timeline?
Great question. Yeah, we hope to have a draft plan in place ideally by December is kind of what we're aiming for.
Mr. McKay.
Could you give us I've asked this before, but whenever you make this presentation, give us a map of the boundaries
Sure.
of College Hill, because it's convoluted.
Certainly, yeah, we can provide a map.
Any other? Okay, seeing none, Justin, move on to your next item, please.
All right, so I
I guess Mr. Waddell's not going to join us, right?
Yeah, Scott is not in attendance, so I'll go ahead and just kind of take this item for him. I know that a lot of the items in the MAPD update include kind of a lot of things that we discussed this morning, including the parking RFP update, College Hill. It also includes some information about STRs. We are in full swing with our STR licensing program and our zoning applications. I know there are several hundred short-term rental locations that were identified throughout the city. And I believe the latest numbers include 92 applications received at this point, and then 50 licenses approved at this point. So again, the planning staff kind of handles the zoning component of that, while the finance department licensing, they handle the corresponding license. So it's good news. We are getting several applications on short-term rentals daily. So that's good. Another item on the MAPD update is solar. So just a quick update on that. We are currently working with the Berkeley Group, the consultant on that, on a draft solar report where they were doing a desktop review of all the items that staff had done up to this point. We did receive a draft report from them, and we are reviewing that draft report as a staff and hope to present draft revisions to the Board of County Commissioners on August 7th. So that is moving along as well. That moratorium is set to expire on September 13th. So we want to present a draft staff report and feedback on that solar report from the Berkeley Group on the August 7th BOCC date. Generally, that's all I have on the MAPD update for now. I'm willing to take any questions on any projects that the division or the department is working on.
Does anyone have anything for Justin or staff? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Justin. Next item is public comments, and I see no members of the public present. So does anyone have any other business for the Advanced Plans Committee? Seeing none, our next meeting is August 8th. And I encourage you to read through the bylaw recommended changes and get to staff any comments or suggestions as soon as possible. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Recording stopped.